In the vein of what the hell is wrong with this country again, the Me Too movement has attacked the iconic statue of the sailor kissing a woman that symbolizes the end of World War II. So get ready. This is going to be a rough one on the Rob Maness Show. What the hell is wrong with this country? An iconic statue of a sailor kissing a woman has been vandalized with Me Too in Florida, just one day after the sailor depicted in the unconditional surrender statue passed away. The statue, which depicts a sailor kissing a nurse, was discovered vandalized with red spray paint bearing a Me Too message across the leg of the nurse, the Tampa Bay Times reported Tuesday. Sarasota police conducted a search of the area and were unable to find any evidence tied to the vandalism. They think the incident occurred on Monday, and it will cost $1,000 to repair the large area damaged by the vandalism. The statue was created by sculptor Seward Johnson in 2007 and was inspired by an iconic photograph of a sailor's end of war celebration during which he embraced a random stranger and kissed her in Times Square. George Mendonça was the sailor in the original 1945 photo, and he passed away on Sunday at the age of 95, NBC News reported. The photo is considered one of the 20th century's most iconic images. It was taken on August 14, 1945, the day news broke of the Japanese surrender in World War II, a day that is also known as VJ Day. At the time, the identities of the two people in the photo were not confirmed, even after the photo drew mass attention from its publication in Life magazine the week after it was captured. The identities were finally revealed in 1980 after Life magazine requested that the two people come forward. Mendonça had insisted for years that he was the sailor in the photo, all while other sailors insisted they were the mystery man. He was very proud of his service and the picture and what it stood for, his daughter Sharon Moeller had told NBC News. Always, for many, many years later, it was an important part of his life. Greta Zimmer Friedman, the woman in the photo, passed away in 2016 at age 92, according to the Times of San Diego. She was a dental assistant who was visiting Times Square on her break when news of the Japanese surrender broke. I did not see him approaching, and before I know it, I was in this vice grip, she told CBS News in 2012. It was a wonderful coincidence. A man in a sailor's uniform and a woman in a white dress, and a great photographer at the right time, she added. Sadly, the vandalism was not captured on surveillance video. Sarasota police have asked anyone to come forward with information on the vandalism. What can we do about our current culture maligning men because of history? How do we address what we know are real concerns about sexual assault in this kind of climate? And finally, I know the vile defacing of this iconic World War II veteran statue is upsetting many veterans and their families. So how does our society address this in a world where only 1% of us even serve? Well, helping us wade through the culture swamp today is our guest, Deanna Lorraine, political and culture commentator, millennial, conservative, an author of the book Making Love Great Again, and an OpsLens TV host. So we're excited to have Deanna with us. The name of the show is Winning the Culture War, and Deanna is here to help us answer these tremendously important culture questions raised by the despicable vandalizing of the kissing sailor statue. Deanna, welcome to the show. We appreciate having you on. We're so grateful for your time and for your talent. I've really dug into your background, and we need people, men and women, to really face down these cultural issues that we're facing in this vandalizing by the Me Too movement of the kissing sailor statue, which is an icon symbol and an iconic symbol of the entire victory of World War II and what the United States of America and our allies stand for. It's just really scary to see that someone would take an action like that. But we'll get to that in a second. Tell us about your
Great to
book.
be
I
here,
want to hear
Rob.
about your book, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to connect with you and be here because it's very fitting. So, my book is called Making Love Great Again. And the book is about basically how the downfall of our country, of America, is directly correlated to the downfall of our relationships, especially the relationship between men and women and romance and the family unit. And I started noticing because I started my career as a relationship coach, working with men and women and couples, trying to get them in relationships and trying to match make them, etc. So I've been in this world for a while. And when I started realizing this, men and women are growing further apart. Men are actually becoming weakened in our culture. And something is just very wrong, right? The birth rate is at an all-time historic low right now. No one's really getting married anymore, it seems like. And people are just having a really hard time even connecting. So I coined this term called the romance apocalypse because it really feels like we're just headed towards different directions, men and women, and it's headed towards societal collapse. This, men and women on separate sides as enemies. And I realized over the last few years that the common thread, the common reasons why America is falling and why our relationships and the family unit is falling is because of liberalism, replacing liberalism with conservatism, or conservatism with liberalism over the last few decades. These liberal values, if you could call them values, they have been creeping into our culture, into our families, into our relationships, and it's what's torn apart our country, and it's also torn apart our relationships in the family unit. So that's why I went about writing this book, because I was so frustrated about it. I know my clients were, and I was just seeing this, divide between men and women. And we can talk about, the feminism's role in it, liberalism's role in our culture. And I went on a mission to how can we make love great again? And I realized that the key to making America great again is also making love great again between men and women, and restoring some of those values that we used to have that once made our country and our families and our relationships so great. And that's what the book is about. It's about making love great again and therefore making America great again, and restoring more traditional conservative values back to America. Now, the ironic thing about it is that what's on the cover of my book is the iconic photo of the sailor kissing the nurse. That is on my book because to me, it represents that time in America that everyone was booming. The economy was booming. People were celebrating and rejoicing. Everyone was having a lot of babies. People were getting married. Men were men. Women were women. And they were both being celebrated for their differences, right? That it just represents that time when love really felt like it was more great. And I put this on the cover of my book to symbolize that. I couldn't think of any other picture that would symbolize that time in America where our values and our culture really was more great. And then, of course, the story this week happening with the sailor of this photo dying, and then a day later, some Me2 graffitied and defiled that the famous statue. It was just so ironic and so devastating to me. I have a lot to say about that. I don't know if you want to go right into that topic next, but that is that's just the epitome of destruction from the left, how they just seem to want to destroy everything that was once great in our culture.
And that's exactly why I asked you to come on the show, because we're dedicating this show to the statue and really to the symbol that statue of that sailor and the woman he's kissing represents. Everything from what the United States of America stands for by helping win World War II and creating a world where we can become what we have become. Which is the greatest nation in the world that's lifted more people out of poverty and has done more for the human condition than any other country. Love is the thing that can heal us from all of this division that has been occurring for the last couple of decades, really, and is really presenting itself now. And that gets me to my next question, which is right up your alley and in your lane, Deanna, and that is, we know as a society We see culturally in the media and from a psychological perspective and an academic perspective, the maligning of men in our
Hmm.
society today, to the point where are young women that are thinking about getting married actually going to want to find a young man as a partner that they want to fall in love with and get married to and raise children and live the rest of their lives together? Are we still able to have that type of setting, which is what that statue represents? Or are we going to continue down this road of what I call malignancy against the American male, where the Me Too movement actually defaces the statue, which really is defacing what America stands for. And what we stand for is the equality of all people. We're all born the same. We all have the same opportunities, and we want everybody to grow up with as much as of those opportunities as is humanly possible. How can we address that? How can we face that down? What's the positive way to do that? Is my question.
Well, lots of points to that question. One is, it is true that, this was taken at a time where men were real men, women were real women and feminine, and romance and courtship was alive and well. And romance and masculinity and femininity were appreciated by both men and women and understood that our differences between men and women are what make us a great team. It's what makes our society thrive when we can appreciate those differences. And now women are being weaponized to hate men or hate masculinity and see men as the enemy, and really demonize men and masculinity as something terribly wrong. Just being born as a boy or a man these days is a crime to the left and to feminists, it seems. They want to stamp out any last semblance of romance or chivalry in a man. And they want to stamp out any shred of masculinity in men and turn men into these docile little soy boys that are very feminine. Or worse, a lot of men are even so ashamed of their own gender now because they're being told so much that it's wrong that they're deciding maybe it's better or easier to be a woman, and they're becoming transgender. They're cross-dressing. They're denying their own gender as a man. This was like so unheard of 50 years ago. This was something to be really frowned upon 50 years ago. Now it's being glorified and celebrated with men turning into women and vice versa. So, back to the topic, really, it's like we have to be able to understand once again and educate people that our differences, first of all, that we do have differences. Feminists in the left, they like to deny that we have any differences. It's a biological fact. We have differences between men and women. I have 4 brothers, okay? I know there's differences. And anyone who has sons or daughters should know that there's differences. And it's great. It's beautiful. But we need to stop pretending and living in lies and tell the world that we have these differences. And it's the differences that when we appreciate them and know what they are, we know how to work together much better. We know what men provide, the unique attributes that they provide society and women in marriage, and we know what unique desires and attributes women provide. But when we pretend that we don't have differences, then what's unique about a woman? It actually denigrates women too and devalues women when we say that women are just like men and vice versa. And that's very ironic. The feminists always say that they want to celebrate women and uplift women. Well, women are actually being disempowered when we pretend that there are no differences between men and women, right? What value is there to a woman anymore when we say they're exactly the same as men? So we need to understand that our differences make us the great team. We need to talk more openly about those differences and stand behind it. And we also need to uplift and appreciate good men and the good things that men bring to society and to women. Right now, the only messaging there is men are bad and wrong, men are toxic, and men are unwanted and unneeded by women and by society. And it's always men need to do better, men need to change. Now, if you're in a marriage of any kind or a relationship, you should probably know that one of the biggest reasons for men to have affairs or to leave a relationship is because if a woman stops appreciating him and never appreciates him but only criticizes him and nags him. Why is it any different on a worldwide scale? It's not. So we should understand that men are feeling very unneeded and unwanted right now, and it's actually bringing out the worst in them. It's creating toxic masculinity when we're telling them they're toxic and wrong and never appreciating them or celebrating them. Yes, there are bad men in the world. There are some bad men, but there are many amazing men too, and there are many great qualities and contributions of men. So we need to spend more time correcting the narrative, I think, right now, and celebrating men and fathers and their need in society, and appreciating them and talking openly about our need for them instead of constantly denigrating them and shaming them. And we also need to counter the balance between what's happening, what's being spewed in the media, which is that women are the only victims and men are the oppressors, and share the real facts. Men are victims of sexual harassment too. Men are victims of rape too. Men are victims of domestic violence too. Men actually have a highest suicide rate. 80% of suicides are males. There's so many inequalities right now that men are experiencing and injustices that we never hear the media talk about or anyone talk about. So we need to correct the record and actually share the truth and understand that it's not men that are just the enemy. It's women and men are both victims. They're both experiencing consequences and challenges right now. And we need to work together as a team again and as a partnership so we can both be empowered and successful in life. And that's just a conversation that no one wants to have right now. And it's not happening.
And you know what's ironic with this particular story, Deanna, is that that statue, that picture was made at a time when women were running the factories of the United States of America, when the United States was building the foundation of the economy that you see today and you've seen for the last 70 years. Women were running those factories. Women were flying airplanes. Women were still being celebrated as women and men were being celebrated as men, but they were all doing the same types of tasks. And what that means is there's something to be learned from history. I'm a big believer in studying history so that we don't repeat the bad parts of history, but we do repeat what's good about history. And that's one of the things that's good. You know, I worked at a big Air Force base in Omaha, Nebraska. There was a building there. It was a huge building. It was called Building D. The B-29 that dropped the atomic bombs and ended the World War II on Japan in the Pacific was built right there in that building. The building is still used today, but as you stroll through the building, you see the amazing things that American men and women did with the technology of 70 years ago to successfully defeat those evils of Nazi Germany and the Japanese Empire at the time. And they worked together and they did the same types of tasks, but they were still celebrated as men and women. And I think that's the story and that's the message that we've got to give to our society today and reach our young women and young men to stand up and be counted and respect each other. And that while at the same time trying to be successful and knowing that they can be successful in anything they want to be. Anybody, no matter what their gender or situation in life is, can be born in this country and become the president of the United States, the ultimate pinnacle of power in the world, really. And that's what's great about this country, and that's why we need to get ourselves realigned. But that gets me to something that we have been somewhat successful with. And my next question is, yes, we understand this malignancy, but how do we address changing that message to one like you discussed and acknowledging the history, the good positive history like I just talked about, while at the same time we know that we have discovered in recent decades a real problem with sexual assault. And it's not just men on women, it's also women on men. Look, I had a disciplinary role in the U.S. Air Force as a senior commander, and I saw many men that were assaulted and sexually assaulted by women. So it's not just one on the other. Now the numbers bear out that there is a larger number of men on women, but it's something that we've got to address. And the challenge that I see for our society and really the world today is, because this is not just an American culture and society, it's happening in many, many countries around the world, is how do we continue to address that good thing, which is addressing sexual assault and the issues that come along with it, while at the same time teaching men and women and boys and girls it's okay for you to be different. It's okay for you to compete in the workplace. It's okay for you to also recognize and respect each other's differences and try to use those differences for your own success and your family's success. How do we
Yeah.
do that while addressing sexual assault at the same time? Because we can't really let that go.
Right. And the answer is multifold. I talk about this a lot in my book, and I'll try to be brief with it. But one is that we've got to, change the narrative from the ground up, right? There's some root issues here that we need to start dealing with and talking about publicly. And one is the fact that, like I said, it's fatherless homes. It's boys who have a lack of male role models right now. There's a severe lack of male role models. 85% of all school teachers are female. Most of those females are feminists. When you get upwards in the ladder, still mostly feminine teachers, mostly female teachers. 1 out of every 3 children grow up without a father. 85% of boys who grow up in fatherless homes end up being rapists and sexually harassed. So rapists and sexual harassers come mostly from boys who grow up without a strong, active father or without a father figure. So when a man is in the house, he plays a very important role in keeping the family together and instilling those good values of respecting women and respecting sex and those kinds of things in the home. It starts from the home, really. So we need to, first of all, this is why celebrating and appreciating fathers is so important. So we can really show the world that it's fathers that bring such an important value to the home and to the families and then to the next generation of boys that they're raising. We are seeing right now a generation of boys being raised without fathers, and they turn into either very weak boys a lot of times who are just raised by a single mother, or they end up in jail, committing crimes or sexually harassing and rape many, many times. So we need to start from the home. Secondly, we also that also involves having a culture that discusses the positives of staying together as a marriage and the importance of family, keeping a strong family unit together, and the importance of commitment with marriage. And right now, we have shifted into a culture. We used to have that, but we've shifted now into a culture that perpetuates easy divorce and that encourages quick and easy divorce. And then after that, it often is discriminatory towards the men. So he has a harder time seeing his own children. This is another reason for a lack of strong fathers in the child's life. Beyond that, now we're talking about the culture here. We need to teach women to be responsible for their own bodies, because right now we've created this narrative where women are very much victims, and it's almost like they're not responsible for anything. Whereas men are the constant perpetuators. They are the oppressors and seem like they're responsible for everything. We can't pin it only on men. And this is why this narrative is so important to change, right? And then lastly, as far as the legal side of it, we need to really clearly define what is the definition of sexual harassment and what is the definition of rape. Because right now, women it seems like they're defining this definition every day, and it's something new. I thought it was, completion of sex. And now today, a lot of women think that a guy just looking at her the wrong way is a Me2 moment, or kissing her, the wrong way is a Me2 moment, or even a joke that she overhears that's kind of like locker room talk is a Me2 moment. And that's just it's not true. So a lot of men, there's a lot of fear going on with men right now that they're afraid to even talk to a woman or date her or hire or work with her because of a lot of false allegations and the definition of sexual harassment is very unclear and vague right now. So there's so many things that we need to do as a society to actually change the narrative, change the culture from the home, from the ground up, and then have the legal system fair and equitable for men so that it isn't just solely, victimizing men or painting men as the oppressor, but also women are responsible as well. And that kind of messaging is out there. But once again, it's important I always come back to the importance of celebrating and appreciating men's positive attributes and what they can do for society and for women, and as well as, make a case for the bad men, but lumping all men in one group and saying that all men need to do better, that this is all men's problems, and basically saying all men need to pay the price for the crime committed by a few men is only going to push those good men off the radar. It's only going to push those good men further and further away from women and kind of rip every sense of goodwill and trust from men to women, because they are so tired of this narrative. They're tired of being blamed for things that they haven't done if they are a good man, and kind of paying the price for crimes committed by the bad men. Do you see what I mean? It just needs to be more of a balanced narrative, and we can't pin all the blame on men. We need to be able to appreciate their good qualities and the good men out there as well, and highlight them and not paint them as buffoons or idiots like the media constantly does. The narrative, the messaging, and the culture, we really need to work on changing that if we want to actually make a difference in sexual harassment and lower this the rate of rape and sexual harassment.
Absolutely.
I just went on a tangent there, but I hope you got that.
That's okay. That's okay. You ended up right where I wanted to go, and just to talk about a little bit about what this Me Too movement just did to the veterans community. Because, quite frankly, I mentioned that I was responsible for the sexual assault response program in one of the units where I was a senior commander. And all commanders are responsible for it all the time, but I was responsible for developing and implementing the training programs. And you mentioned, and I can't emphasize this enough, defining what sexual harassment and sexual assault and rape are for young people is critical to the success of any of these types of programs, because it's not the type of program, it's the knowledge that you're able to impart about to the young men and women is what's going to lead you to success. But the Me Too movement, as we get down to what they just did with the veterans community and their families by attacking this statue, is, I'm going to be frank here, they pissed them off. I'm hearing from people all over the world that wear the uniform of the United States, and other people that wear the uniforms of our allies, that the Me Too movement has gone completely off the rails. And that's been one of my big concerns for a long, long time, is that while it might have been a righteous movement at the beginning, it's really gone off the rails from a political perspective, and from the perspective that you mentioned, Deanna, and that is only attacking males, only talking about toxic masculinity and these types of terms. And then what do? We end up focusing on, we used to call it in the military, you focus most of your time on the 10%, and the other 90% are the good men and women, and they get left out in the cold and fall through the cracks because you're having to focus on the 10% of the bad. And that's just not men, that's also women. So we don't want to focus on that. We want to deal with it. We want to help them fix themselves if they can be fixed, or we want to put them away if they can't be fixed, and then focus on the positives. And I think the veterans community, while they're very upset about the attack on the statue, that's what they would tell you too if they were all here today, is that, look, we love America. We think it's a good thing that we've evolved and identified these things like sexual assault, rape, and these issues and challenges that we need to face down. But it's not the right thing to do to attack everything about the country, because this was, as you mentioned, the iconic symbol of everything that's right about men and women in the United States of America, and it needs to stay that way.
Right, and the thing is that you're so right. And that moment, if you actually heard what the sailor said, was he was actually so appreciative of all the nurses when they were abroad, and how much all the nurses took care of the sailors and of the soldiers. He said in that moment, he felt so much glory, so much excitement, so much happiness of the victory, that his first instinct really after, feeling so joyous was, he felt overwhelmed with appreciation for the nurses, actually, and what they did, how much they helped. And so he just, grabbed a nurse and kissed her out of appreciation. And the nurse also said that she liked it. She understood that this wasn't assault or, kissing without her consent. She took it as the way he intended, which was joyous. It was a victory. Everyone was celebrating everyone and kissing everyone like it's New Year's Eve. And she got the intent behind it. And, feminists are trying to just destroy every positive intent that men ever seem to have, right? And twist and turn it into something that was evil or malicious. And it's, with the soldier that they Me Too'd it, saying, oh, if it was back in the day and she could redo it, she would be a Me Too case, and she would call this out as Me Too. Well, when you actually talk to the nurse, and she's shared her story before, she didn't think it was a Me Too moment. She liked it, and she got his intent. So I'm really sick and tired, and I think most men are sick and tired of being villainized, and having their pure intentions mistaken and twisted into something that was evil, or something that, they were just one step away from raping a woman. And that's why we have to have this public conversation about not all men are like that. And just one more quick thing is this whole narrative that started with Kavanaugh, with believe women, believe all survivors, hashtag believe women. Now this narrative is so much that men are guilty until proven innocent. We're supposed to have innocence until proven guilty in our country. It's one of our staples. And they're supposed to have a fair trial, and we're all supposed to listen to the facts and the truth and both sides before jumping to any conclusion, right? And now women in the Me Too movement have twisted that narrative and said, no, the new thing that we want you to do is just believe women, blindly believe them without hearing any facts or any side of the story. And, this is scary because it leads to false accusations, and it definitely leads to women being weaponized to turn against men and see men's intentions, even if they were good, as always evil and always wrong and malicious. And I think that's just very sad. It's just destroying any goodwill and trust between men and women that we used to have with each other, right?
And sadly, we've also learned in recent days that you only have to believe all women if they're against the wrong political party.
If they're the left, yeah, if they're on the left, you
If
believe
the
women.
perpetrator is the accused is in the right political party, you don't believe all women. So
Right.
it's a political issue, and that's what we who are opposed to this type of activity and this type of approach have been opposed to it for. We've said that all along. It's a political issue, and you get down to the nutshell and the kernel inside the nutshell. It's that this is about how our society treats men and women, both culturally and legally, and we've got to maintain the legal structure that's been handed down to us and we've cared for and nurtured all these years because it's the best one and better than any in the history of mankind, of all the world, really. So we've got to maintain that. But there's a positive way that we can address the cultural side. And I thank you, Deanna, for joining me today to talk about those positive ways and take the issue head on and recognize that we can celebrate the differences between men and women, but at the same time, nurture them so that they can be anything that they want when they grow up in this society and still be able to be husbands and wives and dads and moms and brothers and sisters the way they were meant to be in the way that works best for our society and our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Absolutely.
you so much for being with us today, Deanna. It was really refreshing to get to talk to you about this issue, and I hope we get to do some more in-depth discussions on other issues sometime in the future.
Absolutely. And I hope all of you guys come to my Tribute to Men rally next Friday in Washington, D.C., where we'll actually be celebrating men, fathers, and veterans. So thank you so much for having me come on your show and talk about all this.
Thank you for reminding me about that. It's the Tribute to Men rally, March 1st in Washington, D.C. Deanna Lorraine is leading that charge, and I've seen a whole list of names, so I won't try to go through them, but there are men and women on that list that I know I follow and admire, that I'm excited to get the opportunity to hear, and maybe I'll get to come up there. I hope I can. It would be an honor to get the chance to do that.
We're going to, celebrate men and masculinity, the good masculinity, fathers and veterans. It's going to be a fantastic rally. So thank you so much for having me on your show.
I want to thank Deanna Lorraine for being with us on the Rob Maness Show today. The subject is critically important to the future of the nation. Men and women celebrating their differences while at the same time knowing that they can grow up to be anything they want to be is very critical to our future. But at the same time, we also have to acknowledge why the Me Too movement rose. And that is, we have a challenge with sexual assault and rape in this country. And we've got to continue to find the successes that we've already found and build on those successes as we change our culture back to one that celebrates men and women and creates good, strong, healthy families. And don't forget, on March 1st, Deanna is hosting the Tribute to Men in Washington, D.C. on the Washington Mall. Join us next time on the Rob Maness Show.